Well, good evening. It's Ian R. Crane. It's the evening of Tuesday, 22nd of May. And sorry about the lack of a live stream this morning at 8:30, but I postponed it to 5 o'clock here on St Stephen's Green, just opposite the Houses of Parliament. And I'm here with Joe Corre.
Oh yeah, hello.
And we were here today to be present for Professor Peter Stiles' presentation. You better come a bit closer, Joe, because we've got quite a bit of wind here, I think. Sure. But Peter Stiles' presentation, where he's been putting forward his concerns about the impact of fracking in coal mining areas.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, we've been obviously working on this report for a little while now, and launched it today. I mean, essentially what it shows, I think, particularly after the events of last week, where the government have decided to try and smash through all local democracy on the basis that our regulations are the gold standard and the best in the world, and therefore, you know, all the citizens of the UK can take comfort in that and not worry about getting involved with any of these issues about fracking, and they're going to remove all responsibility from the local councils because, you know, our regulations are gold standard. And then we find out that actually they have done zero work on identifying or investigating the available evidence from historic coal mining where you know, the ground has already been undermined and made fragile from extracting coal in the past, and yet these areas are the very areas that are directly underneath where they're proposing to frack. And it shows that the fault lines that are currently being detected by seismic testing by the fracking industry are useless, because the capability of the technology, all these thumper trucks and seismic testing apparatus, needs a 5 times greater magnification to be able to identify the very fault lines that can cause a 0.5 magnitude earthquake or higher, because they just don't show up on the seismic equipment. However, we have all that information at our fingertips because it was recorded very accurately and precisely by the coal board and coal mining, because it was really important that you know, you don't place people in a situation where they could be you know, where the things. We're just live, officer. Sorry, if you just give us a minute. So the situation is that, in fact, when Professor Stiles has overlaid the maps of where the existing fault lines from the British Geological Survey show that, you know, you've got these major fault lines here and there, and you're supposed to be, according to the advice from these scientists, 850 metres away as a minimum from the fault line when you wish to frack. It actually shows that there are significant fault lines within very close proximity, and in fact in Hart Hill it shows that they have a major fault line capable of producing a greater seismic event than a 0.5 magnitude within 10 metres of the proposed borehole. Now, it also shows that this picture is going to be repeated over all previously coal-mined areas. What's amazing is that nobody, with our gold standard regulations, has bothered to look at any of this evidence. So it shows that our regulations are a complete farce.
Well, and to add another angle to this, Professor Stiles isn't actually anti-fracking, is he?
No.
You know, he's, in fact, he made the point to me that he's actually sort of ambivalent, you know, one way or the other. But what he is concerned about is that if this industry actually does start the process of fracking, it's actually going to shoot itself in the foot almost right away, because it's almost inevitable that it is going to cause seismic activity above the 0.5
yes,
trigger point.
On areas that have already been undermined and made fragile by coal extraction in the past. They are fragile areas. Another point being is that when the government closed down all the coal mines originally, they had to take on responsibility for ensuring forevermore that any seismic activity or damage caused by previous mine workings would be paid out of the public purse. Right? Now, if INEOS go ahead and drill their borehole in Hart Hill and cause a load of earthquakes from old coal mines, who pays?
And a lot of property damage, potentially.
Well, yeah, and who pays?
Yeah.
The public purse? Who knows?
Well, it won't be INEOS, will it?
Don't know. Who knows? But what it means is, and what we're calling for today, is a complete moratorium, at least in all areas that have previously been undermined by coal extraction.
Which pretty much means the entire North of England, because funnily enough, the Boland Shale sits above, and this is actually covered in Professor Stiles' report, the Boland Shale sits beneath the coal measures. And it's the coal measures across Lancashire and Yorkshire which have been mined for the past 2 centuries plus.
Yeah.
And you know, although the maps of the coal workings are the sort of best guess by those who were responsible for mapping during the days of the National Coal Board.
They're very accurate mines because they had to be. Very accurate in terms of fault lines and where they are. And those fault lines are not capable of being picked up by the current seismic testing equipment. So what do you do? And there is a duty where for planning applications, these companies need to use all available geological data. Now, this information is available. It happens to be on old paper maps, not digitised, but Professor Stiles, funnily enough, was able to source a small example of an area that included, for example, Hart Hill, where INEOS wants to frack. They were able to include this small example because it so happened that a group of PhD students that he was working with, that were working on an entirely different subject, had done the work and converted the old paper maps to a digital format that could be overlaid on top of the British Geological Survey maps. And hey-ho, what it showed is the whole area is riddled with fault lines that are capable of delivering more than a 0.5 earthquake. Now, it's important to also realise that a 0.5 magnitude earthquake is not terribly big seismic event. However, if you don't stop, which is precisely why the government has this traffic light system in place, if you don't stop fracking at that point, that 0.5 magnitude earthquake can rapidly rise to something much more dangerous.
So this is a report. I know that just before we started broadcasting, The Independent have actually put online their article.
Yes.
And I know that Professor Stiles has gone off to the BBC to do an interview. But this is a report, and I've got about a dozen copies with me that I'm going to take back to Nottinghamshire. But this is a report that everyone who is concerned about the potential for fracking in the north of England, particularly right across the Boland Shale, which is everything from Cheshire up to Lancashire, across to North Yorkshire, down through South Yorkshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire. Everyone needs to see this report. And Professor Stiles did tell me that he was up for doing a few presentations in key areas, because this is crucial information. And I say what makes this unique is that Professor Stiles isn't doing this from an anti-fracking stance. His motivation is to try to prevent the unconventional gas industry effectively shooting itself in the foot right from the get-go, because, you know, if Quadrilla trigger another seismic event in the Fylde, it's game over.
Sure. That's quite right. And I think his other motivation, you know, that he was giving advice to Quadrilla originally at Priest Hall in Blackpool. And he did tell them, you know, don't, you need to be really careful about, you know, creating seismic events within this area. He said, you know, the guys seemed like they were from Texas or America, like, what do you know about this? We know about fracking. They didn't listen.
It was Mark Miller.
And so I think part of his motivation is also to say, actually, you should have listened to me before,
right from the get-go.
You know, because I know what I'm talking about. You might be from Texas, but I'm from here, and I know about mining. And one of his comments was, You know, we might have forgotten about mining, but mining hasn't forgotten about us. You know.
Ain't that the truth? Now, talking about Quadrilla, so this is Professor Stiles' report. It's, what is it, about 30 odd pages. But meanwhile, this is the injunction documentation that Quadrilla have been posting all around their well site in Preston New Road. And this is their attempt to establish an INEOS style or UCOG style injunction, effectively preventing any lawful protest against their activities. And of course this is coincidental, not that this is published and distributed on the same day that Quadrilla have announced that they've submitted their application to Greg Clark for permission to frack at Preston New Road.
I mean, what we have here is a collection of events that show the sheer desperation of this industry and their friends in government that are helping them to try and push this thing through. You have on the one hand a ministerial statement that shows that they want to reenact what they put in the Conservative manifesto about permitted development, but had to take out of the Queen's speech, along with taking school dinners away from school children. But now they're like creeping back in and saying that effectively, you know, our regulations are so great that we can push this through as permitted development. We're going to smash local democracy out of the way because we want to get on with this ideological, crazy, fanatic idea to frack. And then at the same time, you've got the companies themselves following the INEOS example of trying to scare everybody out of the way with these draconian injunctions. It's a sign of desperation. The writing is on the wall. We're surrounded now by countries that have either banned it or have moratoriums in place. The Conservatives are isolated as the only political party still trying to push this craziness through. And what the Stiles report has shown today is that their regulations are a farce. How have they not noticed what's right in front of their nose? We know this country's built on coal. The Industrial Revolution is built on coal. They're mining straight through the coal mines. They're mining through seismic plate movements. They're mining through fault lines that, you know, I hope that these people finally see sense and put a pause on this thing and start to look at all the evidence instead of them being this kind of three monkeys approach, you know. And I hope that's what happens.
I mean, this is, first of all, I have to say that it's an outstanding compendium of all the community initiatives that have occurred in Lancashire and elsewhere. And of course, this has very much contributed to Quadrilla now being 17 months into a 6-month project. But obviously, it's getting to a crunch point because Quadrilla, they're not going to fall into the third energy trap of getting the frack kit on first and then asking for permission. They're going to get permission, they hope, first and then bring all the frack kit on. But obviously, what Quadrilla are hoping is that by serving this, it's going to scare the pants off of the local community into not doing any further direct action. But actually, I think the opposite might actually be the case.
Well, I think that's right. And I think one of the things that people don't realise as well is with all of these injunctions, they don't really have any teeth. It's not an arrestable offence. The police cannot arrest you for breaking this injunction.
Exactly.
It's really down to the private companies to then follow up with you and try to pill people out and, you know, try and kind of victimise certain people or to break people's spirit. It's not really going to work. You know, we have to fight them because actually it does have a chilling effect on ordinary people wanting to kind of stand up and say something. It does kind of make them think, well, am I going to lose my house? Am I going to be sent to prison for 2 years? All of that kind of thing. But it's never really going to happen. It's a false flag thing. One thing I would like to say though, for any business people watching this, see that name there? It's called Evershed Sutherland. That's the name of a legal firm, right? If you have any choice to actually use any legal firms, don't use them. They're arseholes.
That's a technical term, apparently. Well, Joe, I mean, obviously what the industry and the government don't seem to appreciate is that none of us are doing this because we're on anyone's payroll.
Absolutely.
And you know, the communities that are rising up to challenge this industry are not doing it because they're on anyone's payroll. They're doing it because they've done their own research and they're passionate about their community. And
their communities are under serious threat from this horrific, monstrous industry. It causes all kinds of health issues, economic issues, environmental issues, climate change issues. I mean, there's nothing good about fracking from any angle. All the countries surrounding us in England know that. That's why they've taken that decision. Are they all stupid or something? All the people in France stupid? All the people in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, are they all stupid? No, they've looked at the evidence and they've acted responsibly. What we need to do now is make this government act responsibly, because they're not going to do it on their own. So, you know, you can draw your own conclusions from that, but my advice is vote them out at the next opportunity.
Meanwhile, obviously, you know what to do within your communities, and this report from Professor Stiles is absolutely essential reading. And you know, I think that within the next few weeks we'll find a way to take up Professor Stiles on his offer to come and give some presentations around the areas that are former coal mining areas that are now under siege by the unconventional gas industry. And once you put the material that Professor Stiles has produced and you put that in front of your local elected representatives, I think people are going to very quickly realise that this ain't something that anyone with any ounce of sense should be supporting.
That's right. It's a howler. They've missed it. It's an absolute howler and shows the absolute inadequacy and pathetic farce that our gold standard regulations are supposed to be. So, you know, you make your own mind up, but I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever now as to what a load of nonsense that is. So the next politician that stands up and talks to you about how good our regulations are, just ask them, quite how is it that you missed all of this geological data about the weak seismic capabilities of these old coal mining workings? You know, how did you miss it exactly? The available data's there. Why haven't you looked at it? Why are you trying to drill a borehole 10 metres away from a significant fault line? Why? Come on.
Time to hold these individuals to account and make sure they understand that they will be held to account and they will be held liable for the damage.
It shows the utter cavalier attitude of the government and the utter cowboy attitude and cowboy nature of these companies that want to frack us. And I might as well add, for INEOS in particular, that seeks to be the biggest fracker in the UK, what are they fracking for? To make more plastic. The government's got a war on plastic, and yet they want to get INEOS to make more of it through fracking. That's all they want it for. I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense. The government doesn't know what they're doing, and it's time we had something a lot better.
It's time to participate. That's the key element here, is actually participate, because if we don't participate, then unfortunately the prognosis isn't particularly pretty.
That's right. It's our country. We better start taking care of it, because this mob don't know what they're doing.
They know the truth. Joe, thanks very much, my friend. Thanks for all your support and your work on this campaign.
You're welcome.
Take care now.
Cheers, man.
Okay, well, I'm not going to be doing a live stream tomorrow morning, but I will be back on Thursday morning, and I'll also be back on Thursday evening with an episode of Humanity versus Insanity, where I'll be joined by Dr. Graham Downing, and we'll be looking at the issues behind the increase, the 11.3% increase in deaths in the UK in the first 4 months of the year. So my thanks to Joe Corre for joining me today on St Stephen's Green opposite Parliament, and I will see you on Thursday morning. You take care now.